Moonballs are one of the hardest shots for most players to deal with. Now, there's a few options that you could go for, but depending on your ability, there's one option that you probably should go for. So I'm going to be explaining what that is and talking about the keys to being able to deal with moonballs effectively off your forehand side. Hopefully you find the video helpful. If you do, it'd be great if you give me that thumbs up. And if you aren't already a subscriber to my channel, really appreciate it if you could do that as well. So in an ideal world, your opponent hits you a moonball, you recognize it early, you either step in a little bit or you step back a little bit, you load up in an open or semi-open stance, you take the ball on the rise and you crush your opponent for daring to insult you with a moonball. But in reality, that's probably not what you should do, because that is a very high level stroke. In my mind, that's basically kind of the sort of stroke that defines 5-0 level tennis. If you can crush balls on the rise with a consistency, of 6 or 7 out of 10, then that's 5-0 quality tennis. So if you're 4-5 and below, the chances are you should not be trying to take a moonball rise because the timing is just too hard. Which leaves us with a couple of options. The first option, and sometimes this is actually necessary, especially if you're playing on a court that's got a fairly short amount of space at the back and it's a good quality deep moonball, is to basically do some kind of abbreviated smash, overhead, or slice high forehand. So sometimes you just have to do that if there isn't space at the back of the court. But what's going to be the option most of the time is to move back efficiently, allow the ball to drop, and then try and be a little bit more aggressive with your forehand. So maybe it means returning the ball back deep with a little bit of spin, or maybe you can inject a little bit more pace and hit it flatter. But this is going to be a much easier ball to deal with when the ball is dropping back down into an ideal contact zone. Hitting the ball up there is very challenging. Taking the ball down there can be a little bit more challenging. Our sweet spot is kind of in between knee and waist height. So because you're dealing with a moonball, you have to move back, allow it to drop, and then hit your shot. So what we're going to be focusing on here is the movement to the ball and potentially the footwork that you're going to have to be using when you make contact with your ball dealing with this type of shot. So one of the keys to dealing with these tricky moonballs is to get back quickly, because ideally we're going to be able to get back quickly and have enough time to then allow the ball to drop and then step in, and by stepping in it's going to make our shot much easier. It's going to allow us to hit a much better, more penetrating ball and hopefully push our opponents back deep. If you don't get back quickly enough, then you're potentially going to be moving back in various different ways when you hit your shot. So ideally, we're going to be trying to get back quickly and then step in. So what we need to look at is the footwork and movement to make that happen. Now it starts with early ball recognition after you've landed from your split step. The way you do your split step is really important. We need a nice wide stable base. So ideally a hip width to 2 hip widths apart. The reason that we want this wide base is because we're going to be using some kind of drop step to initiate our movement back. So if we land with our feet close together and I'm trying to move backwards, I'm now stepping out like that. And that's a much slower movement than if I land and then I drop my foot underneath. So I land, open up, drop my foot underneath, and then push off. So the landing from the split step, nice and wide and stable, is going to be key. Obviously, we're also trying to land on the balls of our feet. We're going to have a little bend in our knees, a little forwards lean in our body, because all of these things allow us to push off efficiently. And then it's really about opening up and doing that drop step. So I'm pivoting on this leg. As I do that, I'm trying to plant the ball of my foot roughly underneath my hip. If you look at my shin angle, it's pointing that direction, and that means I'm going to be able to push off quickly in that direction. And it's a case of just practicing this over and over again until you're familiar with the movement, because it's challenging for most people to be looking down that way and moving quickly in this direction. So you have to practice it without the ball first. And obviously what I want you to notice is that as I'm doing that, I'm also doing an upper body unit turn. So as my body turns, I'm basically lifting my racket up into my unit turn. So now my racket is almost ready to initiate the swing. Because if you arrive back here and the racket's still down there, you're still going to be really struggling for time. So it's just rehearsing this first step over and over again to help you get back. Potentially, then we might need additional steps. So we might need a crossover step and then a shuffle step. So the shuffle step looks like this. So crossover step, shuffle step, give me enough time, step in, hit the shot. Maybe I need an extra step. But we have to get back, load off that outside leg, so then we can step in on our shot. And that's the bit that you need to practice over and over again until it's a habit. Now, something this obviously depends on is the early ball recognition. Unless you quickly recognize that the ball is going deep, it's really hard for you to start your movement. And even if you've got fantastic footwork, you still might not get back in time. And the reality is this is what throws a lot of players off, because their visual systems aren't capable of quickly reading where the ball's going. To help you with that, I've actually created a free tennis vision starter program, because you can train your vision, you can improve your reaction speed, improve how quickly you can read where the ball's going, and that's going to help with dealing with the moon balls and all of your other shots. So if you would like to work on this free vision program, I'll place a link up there, and I'll place a link down in the description so that you can get hold of it. Now that we're back in position, we've got to look at the way that we're actually going to hit the ball. And what we're really going to be focusing on here is the footwork, because that's the thing that's going to vary tremendously. Now, as I've already said, ideally, we're going to get back, we'll have plenty of time, and then we'll be able to step in and hit from a neutral stance. So this is the shot that most players are familiar with. So if you can do that, fantastic. But unfortunately, it's not always going to work out that way. Sometimes the ball will be too good, or you will have been too slow, and you'll be having to use some other variation of stance. So we've got a number of different possibilities here, and this is what makes tennis so challenging, and what makes the forehand in particular so challenging. A lot of players are trying to hit shots that basically aren't possible because they're doing the incorrect thing with their feet. So in terms of order of likelihood and potential difficulty, one of the first ones you might need is a reverse single leg pivot. So the reverse single leg pivot, I'm loading off my right leg. Obviously I'm always driving through my right leg to initiate the forward swing, but here the ball is a little bit deeper. We recognize that we're not going to be able to get back as much as we want. I can't necessarily meet the ball out in front, so I'm going to be trying to come up the back of the ball. And to allow myself to do that and allow my hips and my torso to come around, this left leg kicks up as a counterbalance and drops around. So it would look like this. And this allows you often to hit a good quality ball with a decent amount of spin back. So that's one option. And you're going to need to practice this without the ball first. Just get familiar with what that feels like. The next option is going to be an extension of that. So sometimes we can use the reverse single leg pivot, but other times we'll need to get back a little bit quicker, and we'll be doing an outside hop. So I'll be taking off and landing on the right leg. So it's very similar to what we've just done. The left leg is going to be kicking up as a counterbalance, but now I'm hopping on this leg at the same time. So it's a very technical footwork movement, which is why you need to practice it. You won't just be able to go out there with the ball and make this happen. You will have to break it down and go, what does it feel like to do that? What's going on? You know, what? Get used to the kinesthetics of it and go through the learning phases. The next option that we've got is going to be a two-legged pivot. So maybe we get back, the ball is bouncing up a little bit higher, but we've got just a little bit more time. Now we can do some kind of two-legged pivot. So again, we're always loading off that outside leg, but both of our legs are pivoting round. So when the ball's higher, this is potentially what you might need to do. And depending how quickly you're moving, this pivot might end up spinning you round quite dramatically into kind of a reverse two-legged pivot, where you're landing on the left leg first, facing the wrong way. Again, this is a very technically challenging movement for a lot of players, but I'm showing you this stuff to make you aware of this is what might need to happen to really be able to deal with some of these balls, because all these things I'm describing here are still easier than stepping in and taking a ball that's bouncing up quickly on the rise. The final variation that I want to show you is a mogul step. So sometimes this one can be easier, sometimes it can be harder, but this one is when we're continuing to move back and we're doing a mogul step. So this is a common footwork pattern when you're moving to a wide ball, but we might need to do this on the deep ball as well. So we move back and then we hit and do a mini little crossover with our left leg. So I'm driving through the right leg to initiate the swing, but then as I do that, my left leg is coming across and I'm landing on my outside leg. So we've got a number of different variations, and I'm going to say it again. You can't just expect to watch this video, go out on court and make this stuff happen. It really is a process. Firstly, you've got to get used to recognizing how challenging a moon ball is, program yourself to start to do the footwork moving back. That in itself will take a little bit of time. So then while you're getting the habit of that, then start to play around with some of these additional footwork patterns. Just maybe pick 1 or 2 footwork patterns a week and just drill them at home in your front room. You don't need to be out on court. Just go, okay, what does that single leg pivot feel like? What does it feel like to just kind of lift my left leg up? Now, what does it feel like to do an outside hop? Because by training these movement patterns, eventually, hopefully you'll get to the level where it's all working well enough that you can just do these naturally on court. And when you get to that point, then you're really able to deal with these moon balls. Okay, hopefully this video has been helpful to you. Lots of stuff to work on. It will take time. If you've got any comments about what I've talked about here, leave them down below. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time.